My name is Catherine Waits, and I'm going to be talking about my applied project, which is called Nutrition Knowledge in Collegiate Athletes. So, to just introduce you to the topic of my applied project a little bit, collegiate athletes are put through rigorous training and practice schedules, as well as mentally challenging academic course schedules. In order to balance all of these competing obligations, they must maintain proper nutrition and health practices, which we all know as future RDs. Your nutrition and health practices are incredibly important as a busy student, and these athletes are going through rigorous training as well, so they really need to be focused on this. This shows the importance of nutrition education to ensure that athletes are as nutritionally informed as possible. Because without the information, we can be sure that they are not incorporating it into their daily lives and letting it lead their nutrition and health choices. So, currently in the research on this topic, many studies have shown that the correlation between nutrition knowledge and dietary choices is weak, but it is present. The more knowledge they have, the more likely it is to positively affect their dietary choices. And these studies on the nutrition knowledge of coaches and athletes are unfortunately rarely evaluated. So, this goes back up to the introduction, just talking about how important nutrition education is by a registered dietitian for these athletes to make sure that they have as much knowledge as they possibly can. A systematic review was performed in 2011 that used knowledge questionnaires to evaluate the nutrition knowledge of athletes and coaches. And the scores on those questionnaires actually ranged from about 45 to 65%, which is pretty average considering that they questioned coaches as well. And many of these athletes turn to their coaches as their first source of information on any topic that they might have a question on. So, this just further enforces how important nutrition education is for these athletes. So, the purpose of this study, what we really wanted to get out of it was to determine whether different groups of athletes across various competitive sports teams at the University of Memphis would fall into this average knowledge level before any education was performed. We also wanted to determine whether targeted nutrition education to one of these teams would improve knowledge from their initial baseline levels. From this survey, the Tiger Bites team will be able to see specific areas of nutrition knowledge where the athletes on these teams need improvement, how much improvement is needed, and the difference in knowledge between each one of the teams that we included in the study. And to continue on a little bit with the purpose, the Tiger Bites nutrition team uses resources such as fueling stations, social media, one on one counseling with athletes, and team education talks to provide education and applicable information. This study can ultimately help us to direct the future efforts of the Tiger Bites program towards the areas of nutrition knowledge where the athletes are showing the most deficiency. And just to go a little further into that, it just ensures that the specific topics and nutrients about which these athletes have deficient knowledge can be addressed and improved upon individually with athletes or with certain teams, and we can make sure we're hitting on the exact subjects that they're really needing the most help with. So, specific objectives, this is really going to restate what the purpose was, but in a little more clear of a way. We had three specific objectives when starting this study. The first one was to determine whether University of Memphis collegiate athletes have insufficient, sufficient, or proficient knowledge of general nutrition information and current recommendations. The second one is to determine whether there are certain areas of information that are less sufficient than others, and to identify what these specific areas actually are. And the third is to determine whether there are significant differences in the level of general nutrition knowledge and of information and current recommendations between the 4 different sports that were surveyed. So basically, we wanted to learn where all of these athletes on average were starting with nutrition knowledge and what gaps in knowledge we really need to specifically address, as well as if there's a specific sport that we might need to focus our efforts in on in the future more so than another sport. We hypothesize that there will be gaps in nutrition information in areas such as micronutrients, dietary lipids, and proper meal timing. We also hypothesize that there will be an improvement in nutrition knowledge for the athletes who receive the nutrition education presentations. So the methods that we used to complete this study, initially we just started by sending a survey out to coaches of the University of Memphis women's basketball, softball, and volleyball teams, as well as the entire cross-country team. The survey was sent out through email to make it easy, quick, and convenient for the athletes. And the survey that we used is a validated survey called the Sports Nutrition Knowledge Instrument, or the SNKI, which is how I will refer to it from here on out. And in total, 71 subjects were surveyed initially. And the specific topics covered in the survey, a few of the topics covered in the survey, consisted of carbohydrates, proteins, lipid metabolism, micronutrient metabolism, and various other nutrition-related topics. The selection process that we went through to select these teams was purely convenience-based. It mostly depended on which teams we had already developed relationships with and or teams that had previously requested nutrition education from us. Moving further into the study, one team was chosen to receive a series of nutrition education presentations, and that team ultimately was the cross-country team. The topics covered in those presentations were macronutrients, micronutrients, supplements, stress fractures, Red S, body composition, and weight management. After those presentations were over, those team members were asked to take the SNKI again, and we will use those results to be analyzed in our statistical analyses. So that kind of brings me to where I am now with the project. We've already completed those presentations and everyone's been surveyed, and that moves us into the statistical analysis portion of the project. So I will complete descriptive and comparative statistics to analyze the baseline nutrition knowledge of each individual sport and how they compare to each other. That way we can find out which sports we might need to work with more or less. Statistical analysis will also be done to determine whether the nutrition knowledge of the group that received those nutrition presentations increased, decreased, or stayed the same. And after we've completed all of the statistical analysis, I will write it up and defend it, and it will hopefully be published. Then these findings can be shared so that the Tiger Bites program and other similar programs at other universities can incorporate this information into how they develop their programs for their athletes. Thank you so much.